Okay, students, I'm going to try doing a video for the first time with my phone, so we're going to see if it works. What we have right here is a finished applique on the front of your beanbag. Now, you should have cut out 2 pieces of cloth the same size for the beanbag. And the first thing we're going to do once our applique is finished is actually put this piece aside, and we're going to work with the piece that we didn't do anything to. And I'm going to turn it over on the back side, and using a straight edge, I am going to mark about a ½ inch out on each side of my fabric, making sure I'm marking on the back side, not the front side, the back side. So I'm going to go over each side. This is step number 1. Marking on the back side of your paper about a ½ inch in. So by the time you're done, you should see a nice blue mark like this all the way around the back side of your second piece of cloth for your beanbag. Now, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take my applique, I'm going to put it back down here on the front, and I'm going to take this side and I'm going to put it over the top of it. So remember, step 1 was to make my blue mark. Step 2 is to put these 2 pieces together so that the right sides are the bright sides. I want my right sides together nicely and evenly, and I want my back sides, or the dull sides, on the outside. So all of the good stuff is hidden, and all of the outside of the cloth, the back side of the cloth, is what is showing. And now I am going to go ahead and pin all 4 corners of my cloth. I want to pin all 4 corners first, making sure I keep the corners nicely and neatly together. Then, once I've got pinned the 4 corners, I'm going to also put a pin in the middle, just to give extra security and to make sure that everything stays together. So pinning them is step 2. Please remember to stop and start the video between the steps. So step 1 was to draw my outline. Step 2 is to do all my pinning. Now would be a good time to stop the video to make sure you're in the right place before you go on to the next step, which will be step 3. I've paused a moment so that you can be prepared for step 3. For step 3, I must thread my needle like we always do and put a nice knot at the end. You'll see that I am indeed working with two levels of the thread, not just one. I've knotted those 2 together, and please note, I am not using embroidery thread. I am only using regular thread for this. Do not use your embroidery thread, use regular thread. And you're going to tie the 2 strings together and have a knot at the end, and then you're going to cut it off. So it's nice and neat. Go ahead and pause the video again so that you can get your needle threaded, you can get your knot done, and you can cut it off. Step 1 was writing your line. Step 2 is pinning. Step 3 is getting your needle threaded and knotting it up. That's step 3. In just a moment, I will start step 4. I've paused a moment for step 4. Step 4 is going to be the actual sewing. To begin the sewing for this applique, I'm not going to start at any of my corners. I'm actually going to start right here in the middle. Doesn't matter if I start up or I start down, but I want everything to be nice and neat and even. For this particular project, I want us to practice back stitching, not just basic stitching. So I'm going to come up through here And you can see that there is a space between where I went down, where the knot is, and where I'm coming up. And I'm going to pull it nice and tight. Now in a basic stitch, I would have gone forward. In a back stitch, I'm going to go back to where the knot was tied. And I'm going to pull my thread backwards. If I can get it unstuck. There we go. Now, I'm going to come up again, about, again, a half a fingernail, half a thumbnail away. Pulling it through. And again, I'm not going to go forward. I'm going to go back to where my stitch last ended. I hope you can see that. Back through where the stitch last ended and pull it through. Again, I'm going to come up about half a fingernail using that blue mark line to help me see where to put my needle so I can keep a nice straight line. Then I'm going to go backwards in from where the needle was. Forward about half a fingernail beyond where my last stitch was. Pulling through and then going back. I want you to practice this for 2 reasons. 1, it will make your beanbag really nice and give you tight seams so no rice or beans will fall out. But even more importantly, our final project is going to be making a purse. We want a purse that's sturdy, not one where if you drop a wallet in it, all your seams are going to fall apart. So we will be back stitching all of the major seams on the purse because we need it to be strong. So you want to practice right now before you get to a product that you might want to actually keep for yourself or give as a Christmas present to somebody. So I'm going to keep practicing, and I'm going to make it all the way through all 4 sides. I'm going to pause my video in just a moment because you don't want to spend 15 minutes watching me sew. It will take you a while to do all 4 sides. Because we're back stitching, we will also go through a whole lot more thread than we normally would. So you are going to have to stop periodically, tie off your thread, and start a new line of thread. Making sure again, now see I'm getting a little too big, try to keep it small and even. Don't get impatient. I have a tendency to get impatient. Sewing is actually a really good activity to teach you patience. So I'm going to keep going. I do think I'll keep going long enough for you to see me get to a corner here. So you can see what to do at the corner. I'm going to back stitch. Now, I'm near my corner. So I'm going to make sure that my needle comes up right at the space where the corner is. And I'm going to go back in. So that I have completed this row here. But watch what I do now. I'm going to go back up into the corner slot again. Right in that corner. See where I'm right in the corner. But now I'm going to go down this way. And I'm going to start my back stitching down this side. And that way I have a really nice, clean corner. So when I turn it inside out, which will be one of our steps, it's going to have a very nice corner and edge for me to do that with. And so as I said, I will continue this so that I have one whole line here. I'll go my full line here, my full line here, all the way, and I'm going to end right here. I do not want to sew this part. Keep this part open. That will show us our next step. So you're going to back stitch here, 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 and here, keeping this portion open. I'm going to pause the video and I will start on the next step, but you keep sewing because this is your step now. One thing I want to show you when you get ready to tie it off, you can tie into the cloth on the outside of your seam. Never tie off on the inside of your seam. So I'm going to tie off because mine was getting too short. So I'm going to tie my knot here and I'm going to re-thread in just a moment. You can see how short I was getting. Woo! and I'll have to start on a new piece of cloth and get started again. I also want to point out that this is the side I was sewing on. My back side should look like I've got double threads on here. It should look thicker because, hey, it is, because we are doing the back stitch. I'm going to continue now and make sure I do all 4 of my sides. All right, so where we left off was step 4. Step 5 is to make sure you take all your pins out. You always want to put your pins back where they belong, because there's nothing worse than having a pin fall into the carpet and somebody steps on it. Not a happy feeling, and people will not be happy with you. So all pins go out and are carefully put back where they belong. You do the same thing with your needle, although you're going to be using your needle again in just a moment, unless you're taking a break. So the next thing that I'm going to do now, all my pins are out. I've remembered to leave this opening right here. So there's an opening there. Now I've got to take it and I need to stuff it back right side. So I'm going to just push it through and make sure that I've got everything pushed all the way through. I'm going to use my finger and go up into every corner. I want my corners to be as nice and pointy as possible and not rounded. So I really want to make sure that I've put and pushed out using my finger, not so hard that I break anything, all my corners. So now, as you can see, I've got this nice square beanbag. So we've turned it inside out. I believe that was step 7, turning it inside out, something like that. We're doing it step by step. Again, you may want to pause the video, get yours all turned inside out like mine, and then the next thing we're going to do, obviously, is fill it up with rice. So here's our next step. I'm going to open up my little opening. I can be a very messy person sometimes. I don't know about you. I've got a teeny little opening here. I'm going to stuff it all the way down inside so I don't create a mess. You know, that my mom would have to end up cleaning up after me. If you have a funnel, that would be awesome. I don't happen to have one. And I'm going to put all my rice down in here. If you're like me, whoop, 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 see, made a mess. Don't want to make a mess, so take your time and get it in there. Okay, now I've got my rice in here about 2/3 of the way full, so it's going to be nice stuffing. But I've got a hole. So what do I do with my hole? What I want to do is I'm going to turn the fabric in on itself about a 1/2 inch, so it's just like the other 1/2 inch that I was using to seam everything together. And I'm going to take 2 pins and I'm going to pin this together like this. Hopefully you can see that I've got the 2 pins in here, and now I've pinned them together. And now I'm going to do a hidden seam. Now again, I've taken a needle and I've strung it twice and I've done my little knot at the end. So I've got my needle and I've got my knot right here. Now I'm going to go down low in here and I'm going to come up to what I'm calling the fold. Can you see that I've got a fold here and a fold here where I bent the fabric down on the inside and then I pinned them together. I didn't pin that one very well, so I'm going to repin. But I've got my 2 little folds here where the fabric is folded down inside. And I want to go pretty far down in there. And then I'm going to come back up through the fold. So my knot is hidden in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through here and I'm going to go down the hole like it's a tunnel. Can you see that my needle's going down my fold as though it's a tunnel? This way you can't see where my thread is. I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to go across up to the other side and go again. And I'm going to tunnel it down. Then I cross to the opposite side and I go down the tunnel created by the fold. I want to make them pretty small again so rice can't slip out. I go across to the other side and down the tunnel. Only a teeny weeny bit. Cross to the other side and go down the tunnel. Cross to the other side and go down the tunnel. Oops. Cross to the other side and go down the tunnel. If it gets knotted up like mine did, just straighten up that string. No knots. There we go. Go across the way and down the tunnel. Again, the smaller, the better, because then rice is not going to escape. Across the way and down the tunnel. And by going down the tunnels, instead of doing a whip stitch, my stitches stay secret and nobody sees them. And it's nice and it's seamless and they'll look the same all the way down. Keep getting stuck on the needles. Irritating. I mean the pins, irritating little pins. Across the way and down the tunnel. And across the way and down the tunnel. And across the way and down the tunnel. I should be pretty close to being done. I can double check. Yep. I'm pretty much there. Want to keep it nice and tight and secure. Now is where I'm going to have the hardest time trying to create a knot that nobody's going to see. So I'm going to make it super teeny. Again, I'm going to try and go down into the tunnel and use the tunnel to hide my stitches. Can you see how small I'm making that knot? I'm going to go down into that tunnel again. Secure my knot. I'm going to do 3 times because beanbags get tossed. And I want to make sure my knot really holds. And now I'm going to cut it off pretty short. Pretty short. And that's the worst anyone can see of my knotting. And now, look at that. My beanbag's complete. Again, I secure all of my pointy stuff, my pins and my needles. And now I have my second beanbag. And then we're going to look at how can you do a homemade cornhole game. And for Thanksgiving, with your 2 beanbags, your monster beanbag and your applique beanbag, your family can actually play a game that you created. And so there we have it, 2 wonderful beanbags.